Assalamu alaikum students. Today we are going to start the chapter The Wooden Bowl. First of all, I'll start by explaining the vocabulary words to you all. So the first word in the words to know is chisel. It is a metal tool used to cut and shape wood. This tool is basically used in carving by the carpenters. Now the second word is clumsy. Clumsy means lacking skill or grace, and it also means awkward. It means that when you're walking in a very ungraceful manner and you can't walk properly and you make accidents happen more. The third word is complain. It means to say you are unhappy about something when you are against something, you do not like something, so you complain against it. The fourth word is couple. It means two people who are married together, like your mom and dad. They are a couple. Fifth word is earned. It means received money for work done. When you work and somebody pays you, so that money is the money that you earn by working. Sixth word is fetch. It means to go after and bring back something or somebody. The last word is nod off, and it means to go to sleep. Now I'll start reading the chapter, and I'll also explain it paragraph by paragraph so you get what I'm saying. Once upon a time, in a small town in Germany, there lived a man called Kurt. He lived with his son Manfred and his daughter-in-law Thekla. They all shared a little old house at the end of a quiet street in the middle of the town. Manfred was a carpenter and spent all his time in a workshop next to the house. He had learned carpentry from his father, who had been a famous carpenter in his days. Kurt had taught his son well, and the son earned a good living. He made furniture for the people of the town, and from time to time he did some carving. So in this first paragraph, they're telling us where this family lives. So this family lives in Germany, and this story is about a man called Kurt who had a son called Manfred, and his daughter-in-law's name is Thekla, who was basically Manfred's wife. And Manfred and Thekla, they also have a son called Wilhelm. His name was Wilhelm. In the second paragraph, it tells us that Manfred, who was Kurt's son, he was a carpenter, and he used to spend most of his time in the workshop where he used to make furniture and different carvings. And he had learned all the carpentry from his father, who was Kurt, of course. And he was a very famous carpenter, Kurt. Okay, so we'll move on to the third paragraph. The young couple, Manfred and Thekla, had a son called Wilhelm. The boy liked to sit in the workshop and watch his father. As he grew older, he helped his father by fetching and carrying things. He learned to clean the tools and to take care of them. He learned how to use a saw and a hammer and a chisel. And his grandfather taught him to carve wood into wonderful shapes. The grandfather was very old now and getting older every day. He was not very strong. His eyes were dim and he could not see well. Sometimes his hands shook, and sometimes he sat in a chair and nodded off. Okay, so in this paragraph, it tells us that Manfred and Thekla, they had a son called Wilhelm. Now, Wilhelm, he was a little boy and he loved watching his father, who was Manfred. He loved watching him working in his workshop. And he also used to help his father by fetching and carrying things. He used to get him things. And he also learned how to take care of the tools that were used for carpentry and for making furniture. And he also learned how to use a saw and a hammer and a chisel. And also his grandfather, who is Kurt, he taught him how to carve wood. Now in this paragraph, it tells us that the grandfather, he was getting very old now. And of course, day by day, he was getting older. And with age, he was not very strong. His eyes were getting dim. His eyesight was getting weak, and he couldn't see well. And also, his hands used to shake when he used to hold something. And sometimes he used to fall asleep anywhere he was sitting. Now let's move on to the reading. In the evenings, when they all sat down to dinner at the table, Manfred and Tekla used to get angry with the old grandfather. He was slow and clumsy. Sometimes he broke a glass, sometimes he dropped a spoon, and sometimes he spilt soup on his clothes. He was an old man after all. One day during the evening meal, the old man dropped his plate on the floor. Crash! It smashed into 100 tiny pieces, and the food fell all over the place. Tekla and Manfred began to clean up the floor, but how angry they were! After that accident, they bought him a cheap wooden bowl from the market and gave him his dinner in that. They made the old man sit by himself in the corner of the room to eat his food. Now, in this paragraph, it tells us that in the evenings, of course, when they used to sit down and have their dinner together, Manfred and Tekla, this old man's son and his daughter-in-law, they used to get very angry with the grandfather because, of course, he was an old man and he was clumsy and slow. So because of his clumsiness, he used to sometimes break something or drop something on the floor, or he used to spill food. So that's why they used to get angry with him. And then one day he dropped his plate, and of course when it dropped on the floor, it smashed into many pieces. So that is why Tekla and Manfred, his son and daughter-in-law, they got very angry on him, but they did clean up the floor. But after that accident, they were so angry with him that they bought him a cheap wooden bowl from the market so that he couldn't break that one. But it was very cheap and it was a very bad bowl. And they used to give him dinner in that bowl. And they also used to make him sit alone by himself. I mean, he wasn't allowed to sit with his family. So that was really, mean. The old man was sad. He kept quiet and did not complain. One evening, not long afterwards, Tekla and Manfred had finished work for the day and were preparing the evening meal. When the meal was ready, they called for Wilhelm. They looked in his room, but he was not there. "Where could that boy be?" asked Tekla. Manfred had no idea. He asked the old man if he had seen Wilhelm, but the old man shook his head. Tekla and Manfred became a little worried. They looked out on the street, but Wilhelm was not there. Then they saw a light on in the workshop. They went to look. Now, after Wilhelm and Manfred, After Manfred and Tekla, they were mean to the old man. He was, of course, very sad, but he did not say anything and he didn't even complain. After that, one day when Tekla had prepared the evening meal, she called for her son, Wilhelm, and she started looking for him, but he was not found in his room. He wasn't in his room. So she asked her husband, who is Manfred, that where he was. But Manfred didn't know where he was. So they asked the old man if they had seen Wilhelm, but he also said that he hasn't seen him. So of course they became very worried, and so they went out on the street and started looking for him. But when they went out on the street, they saw a light on in the workshop, the workshop of Manfred, where Manfred used to work. They went inside and they went to look who was in the workshop. They stepped into the workshop and found their son sitting on the floor. He was cutting a small block of wood and working as hard as he could. "Ah, there you are," said Tekla. "What are you making, son?" asked Manfred. Wilhelm put down the block of wood and the chisel. He looked up at his parents. "I am making a wooden bowl for you to eat from when you are old," replied the boy. The parents looked at each other, their eyes filled with tears. "Come," "Dinner is ready," said Tekla softly, and she put her arms around her son, and the three of them went back to the house. After this, Tekla and Manfred always asked the old grandfather to sit with them at table. Now, when they went out in the workshop, they saw that Wilhelm was there and he was working on a small block of wood. And when they asked him what he was making, he replied that he was making a wooden bowl for them, that when they grow old, they are going to eat their dinner in that wooden bowl. So, of course, they were really shocked and their eyes filled with tears when they heard that. So after that, Tekla took Wilhelm inside the house and she asked him to come for dinner. But of course, that's when they realized that whatever they were doing to the grandfather, their son, he was looking at them. He was watching their behavior towards the grandfather and he was actually acting upon it. So that's when they realized they were being very bad to the grandfather, and they used after that day they always asked the grandfather to sit with them at the table.